When we dive into our number ones.
So the number one on my list. Listen, this book is close to my heart for several reasons. Because it goes from business to personal. It covers a lot. I really like this author. It's by Gay Hendricks. No pause. Gay Hendricks, The Big Leap, is my number one recommendation for any entrepreneur. The Big Leap. So The Big Leap talks about so many things that are found in other books, but it just puts it in a great package. Like I go back and I read that book or I listen to that audiobook at least twice a year.
Wow.
And that's been since 2019 or 2018. I think 2019. I've been listening to that book and reading that book over. So some of the things, I mean, there's so much. I implore you to go get it. Some of the things that I walked away with in that book is set your thermostat. So he talks about how we have a level that we're comfortable with in terms of how happy we allow ourselves to be, how happy how long we allow ourselves to be happy and content until we find something to moan and complain about and bellyache about. So I liken that to money. So everybody can relate to this. In your mind, you have a number that you have to have in your bank account to breathe easy. That could be $500, it could be $1,000, it could be $500,000. But you have a number that you have to have in your bank account to feel okay, right? Once your bank account goes below that number, you get very uncomfortable. Mm-hmm. You get so like you might not be able to sleep. You might have some anxiety. You're gonna go out there and get it. You're gonna grind to get back to that number that you're comfortable with. Like, whew, okay. It might be 1 month's bills. It might be 3 months. It might be a 6-month emergency fund. Whatever it is, you have that amount. So that's your internal thermostat as far as your finances. You have to be there to be okay. Yeah. And the same happens if your 500 mark or your 5,000 mark or your 500,000 mark. If you exceed that amount, your mind will react the same way unless you train it not to. Like, oh shoot, I got this much money. I got to get back to where I'm comfortable. Because right here, when I'm right here, I'm not comfortable. Right? So you find ways to spend that money to bring yourself back to that comfortable thermostat. Because when you set the thermostat, if it gets too high, it'll cool it down. If it gets too low, it'll heat it back up, right? Mm-hmm. So your mind works the same way when you set the thermostat at that. So if your thermostat was set at 10,000 and now you got 100,000 in the bank, you're like, oh shoot, I got all this money. And then like if you don't train your mind, you're gonna look for ways to spend it. That's why a lot of times people who win the lottery end up more broke than when they started. Yeah. Because they don't take the big leap in their mind to change their thermostat. So that's one thing. Wow. 2, he talks about our capacity for happiness and how a lot of times when business is going well, we'll turn it around and have our family be like disrupted because we in our mind feel like we have to have some friction to fight against. Like I can't have all 3 things going well at once. That's like I can't have my family going well, my health going well, my finances going well. I can't have that, and you'll self-sabotage. And he talks about some of the people that he saw and treated that were very successful in business, but terrible at relationships because they would self-sabotage the relationships. So that's another thing that I learned from. So that helped me in my relationship, in my marriage, in my parenting. Another thing that he talked about is not spending time doing the things that you're not gonna be a master at. He talks about the different levels of mastery, right? And he gave an example of somebody who would charge, I can't remember the number. I think it's like $500 or $5,000 for a consultation for an hour. He was a business consultant, and he spent the afternoon trying to put a printer together on his network. And his neighbor came and did it. He spent the whole afternoon, couldn't do it. His neighbor came and did it in 20 minutes.
Yeah.
And he was like, why did you spend all that time trying to figure this out? If you equate that to the amount of time that you would have charged somebody for that time, you could have bought so many printers and connected so many. You could have hired out this level of work that is not in your zone of genius. He talks about operating in your zone of genius. What is your identifying your zone of genius? Like that rings true to me, and now I could look at stuff and say, that's not for me. That's not in my zone of genius. I'm not gonna venture into that, right? So that's something that, I mean, there's so many jewels in that book, and he talks, for me, because I'm someone who's very risk averse, I was afraid to take big leaps and take jumps and try things. It allowed me to say, hey, if it's in my zone of genius, it will help me to, if it's in the zone that I'm operating at and I'm not yet at my genius level, let me learn from this experience. But there's so many other things. I think you read that book too. I know I recommended it to you.
I know I it's on my list. I think I did, but I feel like now I need to read it again because what you're
Bro, The
talking
Big
about.
Leap by Gay Hendricks, it talks about like our hidden fears. Like,
Yeah.
and how when we grow up, if we grow up with siblings, we're taught not to outshine people, right? And this is something that helped me with my parenting. Like, I try not to tell my son to not do something so well because it will embarrass my other son, or vice versa, right? So I allow them to shine in their own field. Even if you can't do something as good as somebody else, don't have that someone else feel like they have to dumb themselves down or reduce their level of function to appease your sensitivities. And that's something that we do a lot in church, we do in business. And when we see someone shining, we sometimes think that they are just gloating. But no, they're operating at a high level. Let them shine. Let them
Yeah.
shine. Them shining doesn't take away from our ability to shine too.
The big leap, it sounds like it's more of a mental leap than it is
Yes,
a
it's a
literal leap.
mental leap. They do have some strategies on how to manage your time. Oh, and he talks about Einstein time. And bro, there's so much in this book. There's so much in this book. You know how sometimes you could spend 5 minutes and it feels like an hour? Man, this is taking forever. And sometimes you could spend an hour and it feels like 5 minutes. And he talks about how time, how time through our perception could be molded in a sense.
Yeah.
So something that you enjoy, when you're doing something that you enjoy, time flies by.
Yeah.
But when you're doing something that you hate, time drags on. And he talks about how he could use, bro.
What do they
Gotta
call
read this.
what do they call that? It's like time free. I forgot. It's like it's big with athletes. It's like a certain zone. I can't even think of the name of it, but I know what you're talking about. Like you basically everything just kind of freezes and you're just
Yeah. So like time comes from you as much as you want it. Like you in a sense control how quickly and how slowly time moves based on your mindset and your approach to this time or this task or this function. Like when you're in the zone, and which comes from time blocking too, which is one other episode of time management. Like you could be in the zone of doing something and you knock out 4 hours of work and it felt like 5 minutes because you were
Yeah.
and because you're focused. And he talks about removing limiting beliefs because we're giving all these limiting beliefs as a kid by our parents because our parents are trying to protect us from getting hurt. Right?
Yeah.
We're told not to do this, not to do that. Don't jump off the couch. This is an elementary example, right? Because you might get hurt. All these things begin to form a limiting belief around our mindset and our abilities and what is acceptable. Am I able to run a successful business when I've never seen anyone in my family do it at the level that I want to do it at? Am I able to do it without a college degree? Am I able to do it without a high school diploma? Bro, it's just, you got to read this book. And it also talks about how an argument is just two people fighting for the victim position. Like, if you're arguing with me, both of us are fighting for the right to be the victim.
Right.
So that talks about getting out of the victim mindset. Like, why are you arguing to be the victim?
Right. What do you get from being the victim?
Exactly. And he talks about how him and his wife haven't had an argument in forever because they realize that you've had discussions, but an argument is, I'm trying to prove that you're the one that wronged me, and you're trying to prove that I'm the one that wronged you. Bro, what is that gonna move the needle forward towards?
Nothing.
Let's talk about the problem, the solution, and how do we move forward.
Yeah.
Not just, okay, you first have to admit that you wronged me, because it really doesn't matter. Whatever affliction was done was already done.
Yeah.
So go ahead, get that book, read that book. You'll love that book. I implored my wife to read the book. Because she doesn't like audiobooks.
Yeah.
I had a physical copy. I gave it to her. She read the chapters. We would sit down and talk about the chapters. And like we talk about Einstein time sometimes, and it's a really good book. It helps you manage, like, okay, why am I arguing here? I'm trying to be the victim. My feeling for her. Let's talk about it. Go get the book, man. But that's my number one. Like, you have to get. It even talks about receiving compliments, like how we a lot of times will, like, somebody put a compliment and you, like, man, you did a really great job on this. Oh, like you'll bounce off. No, accept that compliment, bro. You worked, you earned it. Accept it, live in it. Don't try to push it off, but live in it. You can live in it and give other people credit, but don't discredit yourself and in order to feel some fake humility.
Yeah.
There's so much in the book. You gotta do it.
That's dope, man. We're gonna put all the links to these books in the description below. We'll definitely have that available.